Good morning, students. Prakhar, Sohani, Shraddha, Alma, all of you, good morning. Today we are going to start a new lesson. The name of the lesson is Mother's Day. So it's a drama and it's a family drama. Today we are going to start with this a new lesson from your snapshot, okay, from your supplementary reader. So. Let's begin today with a new lesson, that is the Mother's Day. So good morning Tanvi, Arya, Gauri, Nidhi, good morning to all of you. Now let's begin. Dear students, as you can see on the screen, the name of the drama is or play is Mother's Day. So written by J.B. Priestley. So let us first know what is this story all about. The following play is a humorous portrayal of the status of the mother in a family. Let us read on to see how Mrs. Pearson's family reacts when she tries to stand up for her own rights. Okay, so dear students, here you can find a family by the name of Pearson and two children, a family with Mr. and Mrs. Pearson and two children. And in this family you will come to know that everyone is independent, nobody is talking to anybody. I mean independent and nobody is bothered about anybody. Okay, so ठीक, बट भैया ये 10th बी चाहिए मुझे, 9th बी है, 10th बी दीजिए. हाँ, okay, so the characters are, you can see here the characters mentioned here. You can have a look at the characters. This one. Okay. Characters are given in front of you, so you can see the characters. Mrs. Annie Pearson, George Pearson, Doris Pearson, Cyril Pearson, and Mrs. Fitzgerald is a lady from outside their family. Okay, Mrs. Fitzgerald is a very vital character in this story because Mrs. Fitzgerald was instrumental in bringing about a change in the personality of Mrs. Annie Pearson. Okay, so you can see the Pearson family here. Mrs. Annie Pearson, George Pearson is the husband of Annie Pearson, Doris is the daughter, Cyril is the son, and Mrs. Fitzgerald is another lady from outside her family. So basically, Pearson family consists of husband, wife, a girl and a boy. Okay, daughter and a son. Okay, so we are going to begin shortly, dear students. You please go through this scene now. Just read this scene part and then we shall begin gradually. Okay, dear students, all of you please stay connected. Okay, so the living room of the Pearson family. Scene is in the living room. In the living room of Pearson family, afternoon, it's a comfortably furnished, much lived in room in a small suburban semi-detached villa. If necessary, only one door need be used, but it is better with two, one up left leading to the front door and the stairs, and the others in the right wall leading to the kitchen and the back door. There can be a muslin covered window in the left wall and possibly one in the right wall too. The fireplace is assumed to be in the fourth wall. There is a setting up right, an armchair down. Okay, the setting of the house, particular room where this scene will take place has been given. Okay, now when the curtain rises means whenever the story begins, it is an afternoon in early autumn and the stage can be well lit. Mrs. Pearson at right, Mrs. Pearson at right and Mrs. Fitzgerald at left are sitting opposite each other at a small table on which are 2 teacups and saucers and the cards with which Mrs. Fitzgerald has been telling Mrs. Pearson's fortune. Okay. Mrs. Pearson is a pleasant but worried looking woman in her 40s. Mrs. Pearson is a pleasant but worried looking woman in her 40s. Mrs. Fitzgerald is older, heavier and a strong and sinister personality. Okay, so between Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Fitzgerald, we can see that Mrs. Fitzgerald is older and she is very heavy also, as well as a very strong and sinister person. Sinister means she is critical, she is criticizing in nature, you can say. Someone who gives you the impression that she is very strict. Okay, but on the other hand, Mrs. Pearson is a very pleasant lady, pleasant yet worried looking in her 40s. So out of Mrs. Fitzgerald and Mrs. Pearson is younger, okay, than Mrs. Fitzgerald. Mrs. Fitzgerald is found to be smoking. It is very important that these two should have sharply contrasting voices. Mrs. Pearson speaking in a light, flurried sort of tone with a touch of suburban cockney perhaps, and Mrs. Fitzgerald with a deep voice, rather Irish perhaps. Okay. So Mrs. Fitzgerald, Mrs. Pearson, as she is very soft hearted and pleasant and soft speaking, therefore she is speaking in a very comfortable manner, very softly, and in her speech it's there's a cockney accent. Cockney means, dear students, cockney is the dialect of English which is spoken in the eastern part of England, that is cockney. Okay, those who speak cockney, their accent is different from those who speak the standard English. So if a person speaking in cockney English is not speaking properly, then it's better you cannot understand his or her English. Okay. So cockney accent is absolutely different. So unless and until a person speaking cockney speaks clearly in standard English, it's difficult for others to understand his or her English. From England, of course, they might understand, but if they are from outside England, then it's difficult for the person to understand. Okay, if the person is speaking in cockney. And Mrs. Fitzgerald has a deep voice, and her accent is Irish perhaps. Okay, Ireland. Oh, okay, she might have come from Ireland. Okay, that is why her accent is Irish. Okay, so as the drama starts, we can see Mrs. Fitzgerald is in conversation with Mrs. Pearson. Okay, and we have already come to know that Mrs. Pearson is a soft-hearted lady, pleasant, yet she is very much worried. She is worried-looking woman, whereas Mrs. Fitzgerald is strong. She is older than Mrs. Pearson, and she gives the idea of a very strict and sinister kind of a lady. Okay, so now let's see what is the conversation between Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Fitzgerald all about. Okay, so let's find out. Okay, so Mrs. Fitzgerald collecting up the cards, because Mrs. Fitzgerald appears to be seeing the fortune of Mrs. Pearson. Mrs. Fitzgerald has learned a little bit of astrology, so therefore she is seeing the fortune of Mrs. Pearson. That is why she is collecting the cards, and that's all I can tell you. Mrs. Pearson could be a good fortune, could be a bad one, all depends on yourself now. Make up your mind, and there it is. Okay, so as Mrs. Pearson is very much worried about something. So what is that which Mrs. Pearson is worried about? Mrs. Pearson is worried about her family family condition, in the sense that her son or her daughter are not obliging enough in the family, and they do not help Mrs. Pearson at all in carrying out the domestic works, okay, in performing the domestic works. Therefore, every load, every burden of household work comes to her only. This is exactly what has made Mrs. Pearson a bit worried, okay, worried, and she has come to see her palm, to show her palm to Mrs. Fitzgerald, so that she is able to predict something about her future, and Mrs. Fitzgerald, being an expert, or being a kind of a you can say being knowledgeable about this particular astrology, she is helping Mrs. Pearson out. Okay, so Mrs. Fitzgerald said, the background is not given here. Background I told you already. The Mrs. Fitzgerald said, could be a bad one, all depends on yourself. Now make up your mind, and there it is. Okay, means everything depends on you, Mrs. Pearson. This is what Mrs. Fitzgerald said. It is up to you to make your fortune good or to make your fortune bad. Okay, it means that there is a message, implicit message given by the writer here in the through the character of, or through the voice or dialogue of Mrs. Fitzgerald. The writer means to say that there is nothing like astrology. Okay, what we are today or what we are tomorrow is because of what kind of work we do today. If we want our future to be good, we need to be very much active. We need to be very much hardworking today itself, so that our future becomes pleasant, our future becomes secure and happy. Understood? That is an implicit message given by the author through the dialogue of Mrs. Fitzgerald, and literally speaking, Mrs. Fitzgerald tells Mrs. Pearson that everything depends on you. Okay, your future, your fortune depends on you. Make up your mind, and there it is. You have to decide, okay, which way you would like to turn your future. Okay, and it's up to you. If you think that you would like to make it better, then you only can do that. No one else can do it for you. Mrs. Pearson says, yes, thank you, Mrs. Fitzgerald, I am much obliged. I am sure it's wonderful having a real fortune teller. Fortune teller means astrologer, okay, living next door. Did you learn that out east too? So Mrs. Pearson became a bit pleased, it seems, on Mrs. Fitzgerald, and she said, it's wonderful having a real fortune teller like you in the neighborhood. Okay, might be she's living, Mrs. Fitzgerald is living next door. Therefore, Mrs. Pearson is complimenting her, saying that I'm very fortunate to have a fortune teller like you just next door. Did you learn that out east too? East means here, east refers to the eastern part, that is India, actually here, India. Okay, because Mrs. Fitzgerald's husband was working in India, so along with her husband she came down to the east, and there probably she has learned the art of palm reading and all that. Okay, astrology, I mean. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald said, I did 12 years I had of it, with my old man rising to be lieutenant quartermaster. He learned a lot, and I learned a lot more. But will you make up your mind now, Mrs. Pearson dear? Put your foot down once and for all, and be the mistress of your own house and the boss of your own family. Okay, so put your foot down, and then she said, once and for all, and be the mistress of your own house. You become the mistress of your own house and the boss of your own family. Mrs. Fitzgerald said, yes. First of all, Mrs. Fitzgerald said, yes, 12 years I had been there in the east with my husband, who was promoted to the post of lieutenant quartermaster, and there I learned the art of astrology, or art of palm reading. But then she suddenly switches over and changes the topic and says to Pearson, Mrs. Pearson dear, you've got to be very much firm in your approach towards your family. Put your foot down. Put your foot down means you've got to be very, very much resolute, and you have to be very much assertive to your family once and for all, and be the mistress of your own house. Okay, once you become once you become an assertive member of your family, once you become very much dominant your family, and that is the end of all the problem in your family. Mrs. Pearson smilingly and apologetically she says, that's easier said done. It's very easy to say, but it's difficult to do. Why? Because Mrs. Pearson is a very soft hearted lady. She is not as strong as Mrs. Fitzgerald. She is soft speaking, and the way she has brought up her children, from their early childhood till now, as she was following a particular strategy. So suddenly she cannot change that strategy and become very much strong and very much strict with her family members. So that is why probably she is saying that's easier said done. Besides, I am so fond of them, even if they are so thoughtless and selfish, they don't mean to be. Okay. Mrs. Pearson says, moreover, I am very much fond of my family members. Although they are very cruel, although they are very much selfish, but as they belong to me, as they are my family members, therefore I feel it's difficult for me to just change overnight my approach or behavior or interaction with them. Okay. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald cutting in means she is interfering the speech of Mrs. Pearson and says, maybe not, but it would be better for them if they learn to treat you properly. Okay. So Mrs. Fitzgerald said, maybe not, but you must teach them how to treat you properly. Okay, because here you see Mrs. Pearson is speaking in favor of his family members, saying ki they don't mean to be. Okay, means they don't mean to be selfish, but somehow they are selfish. Understood? So she is trying to make up the rude behavior, make up for the rude behavior of her children, but with this statement. Then Fitzgerald said, maybe not, maybe they don't mean to be so rude, but of course they must understand that they should treat you properly. Mrs. Pearson says, yes, I suppose it would in a way. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald, no doubt about it at all. Who is the better for being spoiled, grown man, lad or girl? Nobody. You think it does them good when you run after them all the time, take their orders as if you are the servant in the house, stay at home every night while they go out enjoying themselves. Never in all your life. Okay. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald says no doubt about it all. Okay. But who is the better for being spoiled? Grown man, lad or girl? Nobody. Okay. It is not good for anybody. Neither it is good for a grown man or for a boy or for a girl. Okay. Because if someone is spoiled, like we said, a spoiled child, if someone is spoiled, it's not good for anyone. So it's good for the individual. It's not good for anyone if someone else gets spoiled in a family. It's equally bad for everyone. Okay. Therefore, Mrs. Fitzgerald says, you think it does them good? No, it does not do them any good. Whenever you run after them, you obey their orders and do everything what they are supposed to do individually. You are doing everything as a mother what your children are supposed to do for themselves. Okay, so it is doing them no good. It is neither doing you any good nor doing them any good, because you are taking their orders and you are performing their activities, their work. Okay, let them do their work. Okay, therefore they are being spoiled in the process, and if they get spoiled, it is neither good for you nor for them. That is why Mrs. Fitzgerald wants to influence Mrs. Pearson, saying that you need to be good. You need to make them understand that they should do their homework. Okay? Never in all your life. It's the ruin of them as well as you. Husbands, sons, daughters should be taking notice of wives and mothers, not giving them orders and treating them like dirt. Mrs. Fitzgerald is trying to also explain to Mrs. Pearson that it's the ruin of them as well as you. Okay, if you are doing the work for you, if you are doing the work for you, it is, if you are doing the work for them, it means you are ruining them as well as you. It's a loss for you also because you are doing extra work, and it's a loss for them also because they are becoming parasites, they are becoming dependent on you. That is why it's a ruin for both sides, and it's a ruin for you because you are doing lot of work which you are not supposed to do. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, husbands, sons, daughters should be taking notice of wives and mothers, not giving them orders and treating them like dirt. Okay, so here she is further sensitizing Mrs. Pearson, reminding her that husbands, sons, daughters should be taking notice of their wives and mothers. Okay, one should complement another in the family. Understood? Like husbands, sons, daughters should take notice of their wives and mothers, not giving them orders and treating them like dirt. And don't tell me you don't know what I mean, for I know more than you have told me. Okay? And don't pretend as if you don't know what I mean. You know more than what I have told. I know more than what you have told me. I can understand from your expression, from your from your hint that whatever I am saying is correct, and don't ask me, and you know everything of that, so don't ask me what I mean, because I know more than what you have just told me. Okay, so think about what I have spoken to you. This is what Mrs. Fitzgerald suggests to Mrs. Pearson. Okay, so any one of you has any doubt regarding what I have just spoken or till what I have taught you? Do you have any doubt? If you have any doubt, you can ask me question now before we proceed further. You can ask me a question. Dear students, do you have any doubt so far? You can ask me with a text, or else I should continue with my lecture. Shall I continue with the next few paragraphs, next few dialogues, or you have any doubt at this phase? Please let me know quickly. Okay, thank you, Shraddha, Bhagwasri, Tanvi. Fitzgerald as Sinister, even though she is good. Tanvi actually here sinister in the sense that she looks very strict and very cruel, and kind of she has some dominating feature. Okay, that is why it might be a kind of a sinister. Sinister refers to the fact that a person who is criticizing in nature, okay, a person who is cruel in nature. Okay, so probably because sometimes she talks very frankly and very like she talks everything on the face. That is why might be okay on the face, because sometimes what happens, like if you say something to me on the face, something that I may not like, okay, that is the quality of a person who is sinister. So might be because of our approach towards Mrs. Pearson, because of our straightforward way of presenting herself in a authoritative and in a assertive manner, she has been termed as sinister. Okay, next you see, and don't tell me you don't know what I mean, for I know more than you have told me. Mrs. Pearson dubiously, I keep dropping a hint. Okay, Mrs. Pearson says, I keep dropping a hint to my family members, but they don't understand. Mrs. Fitzgerald, hint, it's more than hints your family needs, Mrs. Pearson. It's more than hints that your family needs. Hints won't work, because they are not sensitized about this particular fact. They have taken you for granted. They are delegating all their works to you, and you have been in the process of accepting those works from a very long time. Therefore, hint won't work here. Okay, Mrs. Pearson. Mrs. Pearson dubiously, I suppose it is, but I do hate any unpleasantness, and it is so hard to know where to start. I keep making up my mind to have it out with them, but somehow I don't know how to begin. She glances at her watch or at a clock. Oh, good gracious, look at the time, nothing ready, and they will be home any minute, and probably all in a hurry to go out again. Okay, Mrs. Pearson doesn't know where to begin from, where to start from. Okay, Mrs. Pearson doesn't know how to initiate the discussion about this particular fact of that everyone should do their respective works. Okay, not delegate them to a particular person only. Okay, so Mrs. Pearson, being a very soft-hearted woman, is not able to understand where she should start, and how to start. Understood? Then she says, I keep making up my mind, but somehow I cannot simply manage to pick up the courage to float this idea, okay, to broach this idea. She glances at her watch and says, oh my goodness, now it's time, they might come home anytime, I haven't cooked anything. Okay, and after they come, they will again go after some time, therefore I should go home and I should be preparing for them something, because it's time they will return home anytime, and then again they will go out. Okay, then as she is about to rise, Mrs. Fitzgerald reaches out across the table and pulls her down. Okay, she deliberately pulls her down, restricting her to go. Mrs. Fitzgerald says, let them wait or look after themselves for once. At least for once, let them wait or let them manage the things for themselves. This is where your foot goes down. Start now. Okay, this is what you cannot do. That is why they have taken you for granted. So you should start now. She lights a cigarette from the one she has just finished, and then Mrs. Pearson, embarrassed. She has become embarrassed, Mrs. Pearson now. She is saying to Mrs. Fitzgerald, I know you mean well. In fact, I agree with you, but I just can't, and it's no use trying to make me. If I promise you I'd really have it out with them, I know I wouldn't be able to keep up my promise. The Mrs. Pearson became a bit embarrassed, and she says, I know what you mean. I agree with you, but I just can't implement what you suggest me, what you advise me. Okay, and it's no use trying to make me. Okay, and it's no use trying to suggest me, because I cannot simply implement that particular advice that you give it to me, because I cannot be very strong with them. I cannot be strict with them. If I promise you I really have it out with them, I know I wouldn't be able to keep my promise. Okay, therefore it's a futile effort. Okay, I cannot simply be very much strict, because I simply cannot do that with my family members. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald said, then let me do it. Okay, then Mrs. Fitzgerald said, then let me do it for you. Mrs. Pearson, flustered, oh no, thank you very much, Mrs. Fitzgerald, but that wouldn't do at all. It couldn't possibly be somebody else. They would resent it. It couldn't possibly be somebody else. They would resent it at once and wouldn't listen. Resent means they would protest it. They would get angry and protest about it. Okay, and wouldn't listen. And really, I couldn't blame them. I know I ought to do it, but you see how it is. She looks apologetically across the table, smiling rather miserably. Okay, so now you can see Mrs. Pearson became flustered. Okay, when Mrs. Fitzgerald said, let me do it for you. Then she said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that at all, because if they see a different personality in our house, in that case they will resent and they would not listen to you at all. Okay, I have to do it. I don't blame them, because this is how I have trained them. I have made them become used to that. So if anybody has to change, it is me. But unfortunately, I don't know how to start and where to start. Then you see Mrs. Fitzgerald coolly, you haven't got the idea. Okay, you haven't got the idea what I want to say. Mrs. Pearson, bewildered. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you asked me to let you do it. I thought you asked me to let you do it. Mrs. Pearson said, I thought you would go to my, you would come to my house and you shall do it for me. Mrs. Fitzgerald, I did, but not as me, as you. Okay. Mrs. Fitzgerald said, I shall do it, of course. I shall do it, but I shall not physically come to your house and do that. You shall do it on behalf of me. Okay. That is why she said, but not as me, as you. Okay, you shall do it. You shall do it on behalf of me. Okay, let's see, dear students, how Mrs. Pearson can become Mrs. Fitzgerald. Okay, Mrs. Pearson says, but I don't understand. You couldn't be me. Mrs. Pearson becomes very confusing, saying, how can I be you? I am myself. You are yourself. How can I be you and you me? It's difficult. Okay, difficult. One cannot adopt the personality of another. Okay, because two people are extremely different. They have contrasting ideas, they have contrasting temperament, they have contrasting opinions. So two persons can never be the same. Then how can you do that? You can never be me. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald, okay, coolly she says, we change places, or really bodies. You look like me, I look like you, but that's impossible. Mrs. Pearson said, that's impossible. Mrs. Fitzgerald gives some idea. We change places, okay, or really bodies. Like you shall look like me and I shall look like you. Okay. So if Mrs. Fitzgerald look like Mrs. Pearson, in that case her family members won't resent, at least in terms of appearance, in terms of the fact that she's a different personality. Okay, they will not resent. And moreover, at least in terms of appearance, in terms of the fact that she's a different person, in that case they will not, from that point of view, they will not resent. But of course they will resent in the sense that if suddenly Mrs. Pearson becomes very strict and very authoritative or assertive, in that case there will be some resentment from the members of our family, of course. But let's see how Mrs. Fitzgerald advises Mrs. Pearson, okay, to do. Okay, let's find out. Okay, Mrs. Pearson says, that's impossible. We cannot simply do that. We cannot change places. We cannot change our personality as well. Mrs. Pearson, Fitzgerald says, how do you know? Even tried it? Ever tried it? Did you ever try it? Did you ever try it? No, of course not. When Fitzgerald says, I have many tried here. I have tried. Not for some time, but it still ought to work. Won't last long, but long enough for what we want to do. Okay. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald said, I have already tried it. It doesn't last long, but of course it lasts for a week or so, and that is sufficient for bringing about the change actually. Okay, learned it out east. I have learned this particular fact. I have learned this particular thing in the east when I was there with my husband. Of course, where they are up to all these tricks. She holds her hand out across the table, keeping the cigarette in her mouth. Give me your hands, dear. She says, give me. Give means give me your hands, dear. And Mrs. Pearson dubiously, well, I don't know. Is it right? I don't know. Is it right to change personality? Actually, dear students, Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Fitzgerald are changing their personalities actually. Okay, they will change their personalities. Means Mrs. Fitzgerald will become Mrs. Pearson, and Mrs. Pearson will become Mrs. Fitzgerald. Okay, not in terms of appearance, of course, but in terms of their personality, they will change. Okay, now let's find out. Mrs. Pearson is very much doubtful. She says, I don't know. Is it right? Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, it is your only chance. Give me your hands and keep quiet a minute. Give me your hand and be quiet for a minute. Just don't think about anything. Okay, and then she takes her hands and now look at me. They stare at each other, muttering Arstata Dam, Arstata Lam, Arstata Lam Dam Bona. Okay, she's saying some mantra actually, she has taken the hand of Mrs. Pearson, Mrs. Fitzgerald, Mrs. Pearson's palms are together. Okay, and they, Mrs. Pearson is, Fitzgerald is muttering some mantra. Okay, so let's find out. This little scene should be acted very carefully. We are to assume that the personalities change bodies. Personalities change bodies after the spell has been spoken. Both women still grasping hands go lax as if the life were out of them. Then both come to life, but with the personality of the other. Each must try to adopt the voice and mannerism of the other. So now Mrs. Pearson is bold and dominating, and Mrs. Fitzgerald is nervous and fluttering. Okay, so dear students, this is called personality change. Okay, they change their personalities. Okay, personalities change bodies now. Okay, personalities have changed bodies. Okay, like Mrs. Fitzgerald's personality has been shifted to Mrs. Pearson, and vice versa. Mrs. Pearson's personality has changed to has shifted to Mrs. Fitzgerald. Okay, and now as a result of this shift, what happens? You see, Mrs. Pearson becomes very bold and dominating, whereas Mrs. Fitzgerald becomes nervous and fluttering. Okay, because because personalities change bodies now. Okay, change bodies. Their appearance hasn't changed, but their personalities change their bodies. Okay, and one has become the other. Okay, now in our next class, dear students, we will go through what happens after Mrs. Pearson becomes Mrs. Fitzgerald and vice versa. Okay, what kind of change does Mrs. Pearson observe? Okay, I mean, now Mrs. Fitzgerald will be the mother of Cyril and Doris. Okay, and now let's find out how Mrs. Pearson in the personality of Mrs. Fitzgerald brings about a total transformation. Whether she is successful or she is a failure, we shall discover in our next 2 classes. Okay, so dear students, now the time has gone out of the time has run out, therefore I have got to stop here. Dear students, have a nice day, but before that I would like to remind you that you've got a grammar task at hand. Very few people have submitted. Please do submit the grammar task that I have given you on my website. Inside homework submission, inside your class folder, inside your name folder, make a folder in your name, and inside that name folder please do submit the grammar task that I gave you in my previous class. Okay, and we shall continue with this in the next class, but I shall also be checking out your homework, so please do submit your homework on non-finites, so that I can check and give you my feedback. Okay, thank you dear students, bye bye, take care and have a nice day.